Hello and welcome to A Sense of Centerville and Washington Township, your place for stories about ordinary and extraordinary residents and places in the Centerville and Washington Centerville and Washington Township area. Let me do that again.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to A Sense of Centerville and Washington Township, your place for stories about ordinary and extraordinary residents and places in the Centerville and Washington Township area. I'm Susan from Centerville-Washington History, and I look forward to hearing your story. Today I have Richard Diaz. Richard Diaz works as a community coordinator for Miami Valley Communications Council. Founded in 1975, MVCC is a municipal communication and technology organization representing 8 communities in the area, including Centerville. MVCC was formed to monitor, regulate, and administer common cable television franchise agreements, manage the operations of the council's cable access television channels, and develop and implement intergovernmental projects designed to strengthen communications between member cities and their citizens. Thank you, Richard, for being here today.
That's a mouthful, Susan.
I know.
That wasn't very podcast friendly for an intro that we wrote on our website or something, probably.
Oh, goodness. Yes. Well, I appreciate having, an opportunity to interact with you. It's been great, having this space to be able to communicate a little bit about our history.
Sure.
And so let's talk a little bit about the history of MVCC.
Yeah, and your intro, I may be ordinary, but I think our building and what we do as a mission is pretty extraordinary, because cable TV was, in 1975, the FTC said, we're going to be putting cable lines through cities. Let's give those cities the tools to communicate as well, and let those local voices be heard. And that same year, our founding fathers, and we'll cover how Centerville's role was big on that, said, then let's make this happen here in Centerville and the Miami Valley. So we were formed in 1975 as the MVCTC, Miami Valley Cable Television Council. But we didn't actually start broadcasting until I think 1978. But right there, we've been at the very birth of public access and community access TV from the beginning. And what's funny is I was looking through our records, and we started in a basement in a church in Kettering, I think off of Far Hills. And we broadcasted 3 evenings and 1 afternoon a week. Fast forward 47 years from now, and now we're doing like 20,000+ hours of programming on our channels, our 4 channels now from them. So we've come a long way. And I think all throughout that, MVCC has tried to make sure that if people have a voice and a story to share, they have an avenue for that. And we live in a YouTube age now, but there wasn't YouTube for 40 of our some odd years of our history here. And even with social media, we still play a vital role in what we do.
Yeah, I was noticing how much history is on the channels through streaming and through, just looking at the things that are covered in government agencies, that's all part of the historical aspect of our area. So I appreciate that, and I see the value of having that available for everyone. In
that history, we have a 40+ year digital archive. So I can go back to 1985 and pull up an Americana parade. Or in some cases, Centerville history has really been leading when it comes to sharing voices with their community. And we'll cover some of that here soon. But yeah, all these, swearing in ceremonies or parades or events, we have them all. And so that has been preserved. And it's one thing to have it as a written document, but when you see the faces and you hear their voices of the people who've been instrumental in our communities, that's something different.
Absolutely. Just going to that, and this may be a segue or not, so I just, I've only worked for Centerville-Washington History less than 2 years, but in trying to understand the history, I went to Mnemonic Intervals,
yes,
which was right in this studio.
Indeed.
And that happened for many, many years. And so I can go back and look at these people and hear their stories and understand a little bit more about the history of Centerville, and remember some of the things that maybe aren't available right now.
You know, I have such a soft spot in my heart for mnemonic interval. It's going to get me weepy if I'm not careful, because from 1992 to 2015, every month, the founders, Aldona Ryan and Joe Ryan, said, I want to capture these stories. And I'm not even sure if they were a part of Centerville history at the time, but they wanted to do this. And so we've got, that's what, 23 years of these stories, and it's 258 episodes. And I made a list of some of the people you've had as a guest. Former council members Bob Corbin, J.V. Stone, we've had Joyce Young, Sally Beals, Paul and Shirley Heinz, Mark Kingseed, Ed Ross, who I know is on your board there, Bob Gregg, noted football player, and then Flower Man, Jim McCutcheon, Bill's Donuts. And then we've done topics like Normandy Farm and Centerville bank robberies and the libraries. And that's so, you know, I'll walk by our monitors sometimes. We've got a big display in our building, and I'll see an old mnemonic interval, and I'll see some of those people. And it really touches me to see, oh, there was my mayor, and I get to hear him one more time. And so he's not forgotten, because he still exists on our channels. And of course, you have the entire archive of mnemonic intervals there. But I mean, 258 episodes of people who have, you know, things to share with their community. And I've learned so much, both from this podcast, which you've been doing now for about a year, and through mnemonic interval, where I'm always taking notes and telling people, you know, I know why it's called Sheehan Row now. Or my favorite thing is I've learned about Stringtown. Yeah, the story behind that, and that's another video. But those things are, that's what I love about community access, that you guys are doing this, and you're taking full advantage of these tools. And as it's developed, our technology's developed, now you're doing podcasts. And I love that, because it's easy. You pop in, and you have a tremendous amount of guests you've been doing throughout the year. And I get to, again, hear the stories of Bob to Bobbin and Martha Boyce and her stone houses. And I learn all about Centerville through my local Centerville history, and then through our community access channel. I get to share it. So I'm so happy.
I actually think that's a great segue, because, you know, talking about how MVCC has evolved over the 48 years. Did I get the number right?
Yeah, 47,
47,
about 48.
Okay.
You know, what's funny is we actually weren't in Centerville until 1989. And the reason we moved here was because we needed a bigger space. You know, we were renting out First Church, and then we were in the Barnes building, which is that Kettering building on Far Hills Avenue. But we have a lot of technology, and technology has been growing, and our channel went from, you know, 1 to 3 to 4. And so we needed a bigger space. And J.V. Stone, who was 1 years on Centerville City Council and mayor for several as well, he had a vision that he wanted community access in Centerville. And he, you know, helped task the staff to find a place where we could be. And he wanted this location, and here we are. And I was at a Centerville Jazz event, and I ran into MVCC volunteer number 1, the very first certified volunteer, who just saw me setting up gear and said, I know you guys. And so we started talking. He's like, I'm your very first volunteer. And he was the Centerville city planner. And he told me the story about how it was so important that Centerville really believed in us and wanted us in Centerville. And now here we have a fantastic facility that, and we'll cover, hopefully we'll cover like how we operate and why we're available to the community. But we have equipment, facilities, a studio, a podcast center that is, you know, second to none. And it's located right here in your backyard if you are a Centerville resident or in the surrounding area.
Yeah, it is wonderful, and I know a little bit is recorded in one of our publications, A Sense of Community,
yes,
about the beginning. But you went into more in depth that I didn't know. Do you mind talking a little bit more about is it J.V. Stone? J.V.
Stone,
yeah.
Who, if you come into our building, we have a wall of fame. And he was on our board for, I should read this now, but I think it's like 16 or 20 years on our board. And really instrumental. I mean, from the beginning, literally signing the papers for us to be created to then. He was on our guiding board. So he's on our wall of fame. And then if you drive by or stop in, you're going to see a flag and a dedication, because without without his involvement, we, may not have been here in Centerville. And he just showed a vision that was way ahead of its curve, when TV was in its infancy, community access, cable TV, to make sure this was something that we could do here.
Yeah, and when you mentioned him, I went and looked at the recording of that, and that is on your streaming, so available then to remember those people that are the visionaries in our community and record those moments. So I appreciate that, having that, be able to know about that person through the media.
Yep. Yeah. I had a volunteer who told me last week that the highlights of today are the history of tomorrow. And first off, I wrote that down because that was brilliant.
It is very
And
good.
then that's why I'm so glad that, you've got speaker series that are recorded so we can relive those. Mayor Kingseed was a lover of history, and he did some Lincoln talks. And I walked by and I see him on the monitor, and I'm so thankful that knowledge wasn't lost because he's sharing that to a library audience. We happen to have a camera there, and so that will continue on, and that history comes alive.
And you mentioned volunteers a lot.
Yes.
So share a little bit about how volunteers fit in your organization.
Yeah, this is pretty interesting because we have as a staff 4 production people, and I'm one of them. You may have seen Liberty, Carl, and Joe, for 8 cities to cover all the school productions, all the community productions, and all the government productions. And so if it's a city council meeting, you'll see us covering that. If it's Americana Parade, you'll see us covering that. But there is no way we could cover the scope of all the news and history of our region without volunteers. So Americana Parade, which, that's a gigantic production we do every year. I'm usually the one staff for that event. I've got an additional drone person who does a great job. But then I've got 8 or 9 volunteers who come in on a holiday and run those cameras, rain or shine, heat or cold, every single year, running those cameras. And that's how a lot of our events work. All of our parades, if we have anything remotely big, the concerts that we do, concerts in the park or things like that, volunteers are vital to making this happen. And then when it comes to school sports, again, usually it's 1 to 2 staff. And then we've got students from our local media schools running all of the cameras, directing. And actually, we just had our awards ceremony. The Alliance for Community Media is kind of like the nationwide organization for Access TV. And they just held their version of an Emmys. And what I was most proud of, and we won some nice awards, but Centerville Americana Parade 2021 won for Best Directing. And that was a volunteer. Directing is a hard job. Managing all the cameras and audio, and the event is happening live. You can't go back. You can't edit. She directed it and won an Emmy for that, or a Philo for that. So I was so happy.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, volunteers are the heart of any organization. I know for us, we can't do our mission without volunteers as well. And
ours is tricky because we ask for a level of technical knowledge and expertise that not everybody has. So we ask them to come here and get some training for it so that they can run a camera correctly.
Right, because if you miss it, you can't do retakes with a lot of the things that you do. So.
Or you have to learn to edit.
Yeah.
Which is what I do for this podcast.
Yes, thank you very much for the help. All right, so how does MVCC help to connect people in Centerville to their history?
Well, what's nice about this, let me pause right here. My voice is getting scratchy.
Yeah, well, I'll vamp for a little bit.
I'm just getting too excited.
There's a lot to talk about.
Ask me that question again. I'll pick it up.
Okay. All right. So how does MVCC help to connect people in Centerville to their history?
What's nice about MVCC is that everything you see in our building, including this podcast here, all of the equipment is free. So the same level of equipment that I, as a staff, will go out and record Centerville Mayor with, or do a podcast with, or use our virtual studio, which is, I keep pointing, but you can't see it. It's on my left here. All the equipment we have, that is all free to use. So all that technology is available to your fingertips. And as staff, I don't expect you to be a video maestro if you come in here and take an hour-long tour, but we are assigned to help you make productions. So if Susan, even though she works for Centerville History, wanted to come in here and do a baking show in our studio, and she's like, but I don't know how to direct a show. Well, that's where we come in. We say, Susan, let's describe what you want to do. Let's find you some volunteers, and then I or one of our staff will direct this, and we'll make it happen. Because I don't want the technology to be a barrier to you telling the community what you want to share. And that's kind of our ethos for how we operate here. And the podcast, which you're seeing here, is our newest tool. This came about because of a couple of things, including COVID, where really how people communicate has changed. And I'll cover some of that. But this podcasting center we have here, there's a 1-hour class workshop. The workshop's free. I host it. And then everything you see here, you can come in and schedule it and start making podcasts. But because we're a TV center, we make the video version as well, so that you can either have it as an audio version and or as a TV version for our channel to share. All free. And this is, you can test it, this is really streamlined equipment. It's all preset, sounds great. 1 button start, 1 button stop, some editing if you like. And then you're making kind of instant turnaround productions that you can have on the air or on the podcast, the next day. And that's where I think we can really serve Centerville History, and Centerville residents, in that we have the tools, but we also can tell you how to use the tools. Even if it's just, hey, you've got a cell phone, you're taking a movie, let us show you how to frame that a bit better. Or maybe clean up your audio a bit better. And then all of our, like I said, our advanced training is free. We really are here because that's our mission. We want to hear what the schools, what Centerville residents, and then what Centerville government has to say, and then share that, unedited if it's government, or in the format you like if you're a Centerville resident, to the audience.
Yeah. As you were talking, it made me wonder, how did you get into this?
What's funny is I was in Greenon High School, so that's out there in Springfield. And they offered, when I was in high school, you could take college classes. And it was like $10 a credit hour, so it was like a super good deal. And I took a couple classes. And one of them was analyzing media. And it was so fascinating that right there as a junior, I was like, I'm going to do TV. Didn't know how. It's not like I was part of the film club back then in high school where you'd reel up the films to watch in class. I just said, I'm going to be a part of this somehow. And so I went to Wright State, and I volunteered from their TV department pretty early on, and then took classes from there, worked at the TV center, worked at a couple of government organizations, and then came to MVCC in '95. So this is my 29th year professionally, I think, of working, and then I've been in it since 1990 or 91 as a volunteer. And yeah, if you come here, I think you'll see that the common trait of everybody on our production team is the passion for public access. And I think that's what separates us from other media people. We really believe in what we do. And that means we go the extra mile when it comes to producing an event like the Americana Parade, or making sure somebody's podcast has a cool open and some fun music so that it really kind of stands out amongst other people's podcasts. And it looks professional, even if the volunteer or the local producer isn't a professional. We help you achieve that. And that's why I'm so fortunate to work with so many great people here who this is, it's their profession, but it's their passion.
Yeah, I can tell that. I can tell that you're passionate about it. And that just feeds everything that you do. And I felt that here, very accepting, and people are very kind and generous. It makes it very accessible when you can come in and not feel judged.
And it happens too, it helps too that because Centerville History is so active and been involved, and I've seen so many of their shows, it really kind of inspired me to get more involved with Centerville History. And so that Stringtown video, I was recording part of we did a series, A Walk with History, which actually won several awards. And that was Cheryl Meyer and a bunch of the speakers there who said, hey, this is COVID. The students can't come to our buildings and learn about history because of the pandemic, and it just started. So what can we record so that that can go out to our students in our schools? And we did, I think, an 8-episode series. And we did the chicken house. We did like the kitchens of back in the day, Asheville Wright House, Walton House, the cemetery. I learned so much about that video. And while I was there, I looked on the wall of Walton House, and it showed an old map of Centerville. And it showed how Centerville was there, and then Woodburn. And a little star said Stringtown. I was like, what is Stringtown? And so I was talking to Cheryl. I was like, Cheryl, give me everything you know about Stringtown. I'm so curious about this. And so I made a little video just because I was like, okay, I'm inspired. This little town existed in the 1800s that it's in my backyard I never knew about. Mm-hmm. And that's where, you know, Centerville, how you guys have sparked, you know, the interest for history for me. And this is my town. Mm-hmm. You know, I've lived in a bunch of different countries and states and even in Ohio. But when I moved to Centerville, I was like, I moved here for a purpose. The police department, second to none. The residents being super friendly. And then I've always been interested in museums, and Centerville history was a big part of kind of what I was inspired to kind of make my roots here.
Yeah, I also didn't know much about Centerville history when I became part of their staff. I am interested in history, but I had never actually gone into the Asheville Wright Museum, you know, walking by for 20-something years. Mm-hmm. But it's a really cute little building, and Stringtown I hadn't heard of either. But there is a Stringtown Park that's nearby, and that kind of gives a nod to that town that was there. And of course, the Woodburn Library gives a nod to
it. Does, and you know, so we serve 8 cities. So even though we're talking Centerville, we actually serve Centerville, Germantown, Kettering, Miamisburg, Moraine, Oakwood, Springboro, West Carrollton, and the townships. And of course, we're near other cities. But you are by far the most active historical society that I know of doing all of this media work. Mm-hmm. And I wish other cities would take advantage of us, and, you know, other historical sites take advantage of us, because, you know, if you don't save it, it's lost. And I'm not sure that newer audiences are going to want to see things in print fashion versus digital media. Mm-hmm. And so you guys have still stayed on that trend. I know you do a tour through time, little short videos on Facebook, podcasting now. So you're keeping up with trends so that people stay interested as new generations of Centerville residents come in and learn about history.
Yeah, you definitely have to embrace whatever's new about, you know, whatever's going to reach your people. Mm-hmm. So grateful to have this opportunity to do that. So let's talk a little bit about the classes and workshops that MVCC provides, and how people. I mean, we talked a little bit about how to record history, but how do you sign up for the workshops? So if you'd have come 15 years ago and tried to learn TV, it would have been a lot. Mm-hmm. Everything was heavy, complicated, manual settings. I mean, the cameras were, oh my gosh, like 15 pounds. The sets, you'd be moving a lot of walls and pieces, and there's just a lot of technical issues. And then recording on site, you have a button flipped wrong and you're not recording sound, for example. But 2022 television production is so much different. And to accommodate that, we've made our classes really streamlined too. And most of our classes are either free or at most $10. And they're free if you are a student at any level or if you've graduated within the past 2 years. And that includes post-education as well. So all the classes are free. And then the only thing we charge is, do you want to learn how to operate a portable camera? You know, how to use your lights and maybe a wireless microphone? It's like $10. And it's done in about 3 hours. We do it like Wednesday night, Thursday night, and then you're done. And then you have access to check out our equipment for free. And I don't expect you to be a TV maestro. I get calls and texts all the time. Hey, you know, my camera is, you know, not getting sound. What could it be? Try this. So you're not going to be a maestro, but you'll be able to do what I call like B+ video. Out of the gate, with our cameras being as sophisticated as they are, you can go set up something in 5 minutes, record a speaker, an interview, an event, and come back. And then the editing class is free. It's like a 90-minute class.
and you'll be doing B+ level video that looks professional. And then, if you want to go additional with maybe learning Photoshop or animation, all that class stuff is free. And if not, we'll help you on that. So we've got the field class if you want to take a camera out of the building, and a studio class if you want to keep it all in the building. And we use virtual sets and a lot of technology back there, but especially for the studio, our staff work really instrumentally to make sure it's all working well for you, so you can focus on the what and not the how. Mm-hmm. And those, again, $10, is our class, which is for, again, 3 hours of training. And the podcasting is free, so an hour and you're good with this. Editing is free, and then you're making TV production, and it really is. We say it can be as long as a parent is comfortable having their kid here. We have middle schoolers who come in here and learn technology, and then anybody else is welcome to come on down.
And it's fun too. It's
fun, family friendly. If you're not sure if this is for you, take a tour. We have monthly orientations, but we're also here in Centerville. Just pop on by business hours, ask for me or ask for Liberty. We'll give you a tour of this place, turn on some stuff. I'll sit you down and make a 5-minute podcast, and you can walk out of here with something on a USB stick or something. Yeah, all this stuff is designed to be as user-friendly as possible so that your vision kind of becomes television.
Yeah, it's exciting. It is
exciting.
Yeah. So my last question that I have as far as MVCC is, how does MVCC partner with the community? And we've talked a little bit about that, but go into some of the details about what, how you're involved in the community.
So we reach out to our schools to say, please use us. And you're going to see a really concerted effort in 2023 on our channels and in our promotions to make sure that our Centerville residents are utilizing us more, because we've been here 47 years, but we're still kind of a little bit of a hidden gem. You've probably driven by us or seen the flag, or it looks like a big 2-story building and it's something TV related. We don't have satellite dishes anymore where you know it's TV Center. Mm-hmm. But we really want to get those stories out there. And, people are super savvy with media now. They are recording on YouTube and on Twitch. The pandemic has made us all pretty familiar with Zoom. I went from never using it to, hey, we're going to patch all of our election form candidates. I used to, I do every year the election forms. Now that's all Zoom. I still do it in my studio because I've got technology that helps make that happen, but there's no more candidates in my studios anymore. So the technology is there, and you're going to see us promoting it for use more. And then when it comes to what do we do in Centerville, really, we ask that you just, talk to Centerville. Their Facebook page and say, hey, you know what? There's an event coming up. Can you maybe cover that? Or Centerville, what I usually do is, Kate Bostorff and the Centerville PR team will be like, hey, we have a concert coming up. Can you guys cover that? So we covered that MGM, that big one that was like
that was so great. Yeah.
Wasn't that really beautiful?
At Stubbs Park.
Stubbs Park, mm-hmm. Yeah, where it was like the chorus and the band. So if Centerville asks for it, then we will definitely spend our time and cover it. So if people have ideas, they're welcome to email me or call me. Mm-hmm. And, if you can't do it but want it covered, or if we can't do it to cover it, we have a lot of volunteers who will say, hey, Bob's the volunteer I'm thinking of. In fact, a good example was there was the ice cream social. They asked for that for coverage. Well, we were pretty busy that week. And so we asked a volunteer, could you cover some of this? Because this is really important to Centerville and Washington Township. And he actually won a Philo Farnsworth Award for his coverage of the ice cream social. And it was just a volunteer who's been here for a while and says yeah, I'll cover that for you. This is important to our community. I'll make it happen.
Yeah, I love living in a community that people do volunteer for those kind of things and won an award. That's great too.
And I wrote some notes down here for awards we have. And we've won for A Walk with History, mm-hmm. the Walton House, the Ice Cream Social, I mentioned. Sarah's Plane. Now, I remember this one. This was one of our volunteers, John Morades, who I think recorded Sarah. Oh, she's a Centerville history lady. Sarah, she has her own plane. I'll have to edit that because I can't remember her last name. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Like Sarah Reichert. Sarah, she wrote some books for you guys too. All right, I'll come back to that.
Okay.
You won something in 2007. Second Lieutenant Toboggan. Yeah, you've had Bob Toboggan on as an episode, and I watched that one. But telling his story, won somebody again, a local volunteer, an award, the Chicken House relocation.
Oh yeah.
So what's funny is I never actually, I remember this winning an award. I still didn't know what the Chicken House was until we did that video, the tour through history on the Chicken House.
Yeah, so it's behind the Walton House.
And now it's behind the Walton House.
Yeah.
And of course, Mnemonic Interville has been winning stuff since 1993. So literally 1 year after it launched its series, it won an award for productions. And then Art of Gardening, Mary Higgins. Mm-hmm. She's a Centerville notable around here, of course.
Yes, Steph, and she does our Walton House gardens as well.
That beautiful gardens back there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then Faces and Stories of the Past was also a series that Centerville History did. So that's like 8 or 9 awards I saw just off of my wall where we have all the plaques. Mm-hmm. That Centerville History is involved with, not only making stories, but making stories that are recognized in Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, Kentucky as the content and the technical qualities being equal, because they judge them 50-50.
Wow.
What are the stories, and then how are you presenting that story to your target audience?
Fantastic. Well, and that's amazing. Thanks for taking me through
Sure.
a little history too. I think you know a little bit more about history than I do. But tell us a little bit about yourself.
About me, well, I'm a military son, so that's why I was born in England, then moved to Germany, and then I've been in Arizona, Virginia, Florida. I lived in Miami for quite some time. Came up to came up to Ohio because of a Wright Pat. And that's when I moved to Springfield and Enon, actually. Mm-hmm. And high school there, college at Wright State. And I was fortunate enough to work at a couple different government centers like Beaver Creek, and spent some time in Fairborn and a lot of time at Wright State. And then 1995 in April, I came down here and I was the lowliest tech position you can imagine. Literally just hauling gear around. And, back then, we would have to set up the cameras like in the room and wire them all to run a council meeting. And it was like anvils of gear, and we'd have like hydraulic lifts in the van. And now it's all robotic cameras. We stick them on the wall and we're good. So I started off from there, and I went into programming, and then community TV. Then I went to government so I could really kind of hone my craft a bit better. Mm-hmm. And now I kind of do a bit of everything. That's what I kind of like. Mm-hmm. I like being able to one day or today, for example, I recorded a cyber security video for the city of Centerville and the city police department. And now today I'm doing a podcast, but for a community channel. And then afterwards, we've got some students coming in to make their podcast, and I'll get to kind of show them how this works. And that variety is so exciting and fun to do.
It for sure is. I like that about my job too, is the variety that I get to do. And this is fun, just sitting and talking about people's stories and places around Centerville. So,
and I'm a people person, so when I get to work with volunteers in the community, that's totally my thing.
That's it, extrovert. So what are the places that have changed? So you've been here about as long as I've been here. So what are the things that you miss, or that have been places of significance for you?
You mean in Centerville?
Yeah.
City of Centerville? So something I miss, and I didn't appreciate at the time. There used to be the Women's Aviation Museum.
Yes, that's what our schoolhouse museum is now.
It is, yes, exactly. And it's one of those things that I didn't appreciate the value of that here in Centerville. Mm. And now that it's no longer with us, I keep thinking Centerville had such a little jewel sitting here on Main Street that I missed. But I've been in the Walton House so many times. Mm-hmm. And I am so impressed at how often you change your exhibits on a quarterly basis, or however long that is, and to such an elaborate extent. And so I know at 1 year, my anniversary was, hey, we're going to go to the Walton House because I saw what they had for their exhibit. That's a cool place. So let's go down there. And you've always had, whether it was Vicky Bondi or her predecessor, or now Cheryl Meyer. What a great string of people who've been passionate. Peggy Brooker, who was the producer for Mnemonic Interval. I'm always impressed at the board and the staff at Centerville History who really show an interest in this and promoting it in the newsletters and what they do. So even though some things, are no longer active, so much is still being preserved and then ongoing through Centerville History. Mm-hmm. And then I remember, there wasn't a Centerville PD building. Remember, that was all part of.
Yeah, that's right.
Centerville is one of the first around here to say we need to have modern accommodations. I can't believe, and I only know this because we did these shows in the Mnemonic Interval. Mm-hmm. Like Benham's Grove is relatively new, like the 80s. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I always.
Well, it was there, but as it being a building.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
For wedding.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I remember when the golf course wasn't here. Mm-hmm. Centerville has been really adding on in positive ways that are so impressive. That it's kind of why I like living here in Centerville. They're always both looking to the past and recognizing it, but also looking forward as to what can we do to add stuff to Centerville here.
Yes, managing those both ends of the equation is how can we progress, but maintain our the value in our history.
And that's one thing that's kind of awesome about what we do here at MVCC is because cities do have to look at the next project and the next thing. And we have a little bit of time here and with Centerville History to kind of also look backwards and tell those stories too, because somebody else will never know about Stringtown unless they flip over an Access channel and watch a video. So that's kind of cool. I get to do that.
Yeah, and I think that's where we have an opportunity to kind of show why this building is important or why this story is important. That our mission is to then connect people with their history. And it seems like it's a similar mission. So this was a really great opportunity for us to talk together about history and MVCC and how we have that common.
And I've learned a lot about limestone since I've been here and have been doing Centerville History shows and those little outward mirrors in the stone houses and the founders of Centerville. Mm-hmm. And it's always amazed me how it was just, we'll come out here and it's just a forest and somebody had a vision to make this Centerville. And then there's some great Facebook groups associated with Centerville where I'll see pictures of how this was in the 60s, before, when there's an Elder Beerman's, or here was Main Street in Franklin when it was like nothing there. And it's so interesting to see how far Centerville has developed since then. And I love having those old photos to show us kind of where we were.
Yeah, to remind you what was there. So I recently was remembering that there was a bowling alley in Centerville for a while that my kids went to. And then what's there now? There's a Walgreens there now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in downtown Centerville. But we had a great time with that bowling alley. But things change, and that's okay too. So, any last thoughts you wanted to talk about?
This is such a awesome little show, you guys. I'm so glad you picked up this podcast series because when Mnemonic Interval stopped, I was like, I hope we don't lose the voice of Centerville. And kind of, again, this is not your job, but you had an interest. And so it was like, let's teach you some technology here and make this happen. And I'm so thankful this podcast has come back because I want to learn more about Bob to Bob and the people you've had on as guests. And you've been doing a real good job of bringing in younger guests too. Mm-hmm. So that we have a nice mix of voices. And I hope that continues. And I'm thankful for this. And I want other voices here. I want younger people to come to our facility too. This technology is easy to use. And, if you're putting stuff on TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook, consider giving it to us as well. Because if you make something and put it on YouTube, you hope somebody will find it. But if you put it on our television channel, somebody will find it because they're going to flip the dial and they'll stop. And the people who find it are your your neighbors and your local people who that content will resonate more because it is, my Centerville person speaking to me. And it's a topic that maybe I won't find so localized and customized on YouTube, but here it is on my Access channel. I get to watch it.
Yeah, I think it's really important that it's local and that the people that we bring on here are residents that have, a voice in our community. And so I've really enjoyed, talking to people about their stories. And everybody has a story, and that's what we're trying to get out of these.
Yeah, shop local, but also, share media local and watch local as well. And I think that's what our role can be here at MVCC for our residents.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share your story with me and a little bit more about this building. It's a great place, and I hope more people come and take advantage of these wonderful facilities here. Thanks also for sharing the story of MVCC. And those of you who are listening to this podcast, take a listen to our other podcasts and thank you to MVCC for helping us produce this podcast, and to my guest, Richard Diaz. If you have an interesting story about Centerville or Washington Township, please contact Centerville-Washington History. Please also come visit our museums in Uptown Centerville Tuesday through Friday, 12 o'clock to 4 p.m. Follow us on Facebook or Instagram and watch for upcoming events posted on our website, centervillewashingtonhistory.org. Thank you and goodbye.
How about